Well, jeepers! You're listening to Smash or Pass.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another interview on the JayBee and Milly channel. I am JayBee, and of course, with me is Milly.
Hi.
We have Dan,
Hi.
and the special guest who'll be interviewing today is Gigi Meroni. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you guys for inviting me. Thank you.
So it is absolutely incredible to have you here today. Of course, people watching this will know some of your various projects, such as Scooby Doo, Legend of the Vampire. There's also The Monster of Mexico, and of course, What's New Scooby Doo, which was personally the series that we grew up watching, is just so iconic. But in terms of the start of your career, at least going off IMDb, I appreciate that might not always be accurate, but it says that your first credit was for a music supervisor role in 1997. But before that point, what started your love for music or your path down to work in music?
Well, I'm from Italy, so I originally, I was playing, and my instrument was guitar. So I started playing guitar at a later age, but I like music a lot, but I never really wanted to learn an instrument at a very young age or anything. So I picked up the guitar, and but then I started to I loved it right away. Like when I started, I really started. It wasn't like a hobby or like I just wanted to do this like for a living. At least be in music, let's say. So I started playing guitar in like some rock jazzy band here around Milano, and then I don't know. I had this fascination with the US since I was very young, and then I thought, well, if I wanna, I had this idea that because I wasn't really looking to do like a classical conservatory of music or like going that route. I love rock. I mean heavy metal, and later on jazz and film music, but that came later. But so I don't know, I was about 20 years old. And I said to my parents, I want to go to the US. If I really want to do this for a living, I have to go to the US and study in a modern, school of music, not like a Paris conservatory or like we have great conservatories here in Italy, but I don't know, I wasn't drawn into like learning all the theory and all that like classical background that. Plus, it was different days, it wasn't like YouTube, there wasn't like Netflix, so you couldn't really see what was going around, the world like you can do now. So I just I thought I picked the Berklee College of Music in Boston, and I thought that would be an amazing school to go to because it was jazz and it was modern, and it was students from all over the world. So I mean, it's a very long story, but to make it kind of short, I started doing these clinics where teachers from Boston were coming here in Italy to showcase there and talk about their school. So I got to be friends with a couple of them, and then they invited me, said, why don't you come over? I got a scholarship, and then I left and I went to Boston when I was 22 years old, and pretty much I never came back after that because I didn't leave with the idea of just leaving Europe for good, but I loved it there. And then while I was in Boston studying and performing and doing all these beautiful things, I started going to LA in the summer to play with my jazz band. The drummer of our little jazz band was from LA, and so he said, why don't you come over? My dad is known in the business. He was a famous comedian. I didn't know all these things before I got there, so it was completely an adventure for me. Then when I got there, and I see the house, and I see how famous it was, and then he said, my dad can get us some gigs, in LA, and we can just like play jazz. And I was like, fantastic. So instead of coming here in Italy and kind of taking the summer off, I took off every summer to go to LA and play in jazz clubs. And I got to know the city a little bit because, it can be, LA, especially coming from from Italy, it's a huge city. You don't know really anybody. You don't meet anybody by chance or in the streets. So so when I finished and I graduated in Boston, it just seemed like a natural to just like go to LA and try there, try to make a living there. So at the beginning it was I was kind of playing the clubs, but I figure it's not gonna make a living. I can make a living just playing clubs all my life. So I took a brief class of film scoring at UCLA, where I met another German student, very nice, and then he said, there is a studio in Santa Monica called Media Ventures where Hans Zimmer works, where they're constantly looking for interns and people that want to work there. So me and him, we just went down to Hans' studio and we went knock on the door and say, we are here, and so I started an internship there, and then I got hired by another composer that was there, and at the same time I started to having I started to get my first independent movies as a composer, and pretty much it started like that. I studied all this music all my life, and I loved a lot of different kind of music. And so when I was almost done studying in Boston, I was like, what can I do with all this music and all these different influences? What can I do with with all this? And then I turned into TV and film, and I say, oh, TV and film, they it's a good medium, like where they use, techno and pop and rock and heavy metal and classical and whatnot. And maybe I can do something there. So that's kind of how it began. But I never intended to be a film composer or an animation composer, not even close, So it kind of started like that. And then it evolved as I was starting out in LA at the end of the 90s. I got to LA, it was like 97. And so it began sort of like that. And then how I got into animation is it was pretty much through this company called Icebox. That was a company that was formed in the late 90s. It was the explosion of the .com era, and so there was all these like cool producers and writers from Hollywood, like really big names too, that wanted to sort of like rebel against the standard way of doing things, and the big networks and they just wanted to do their own thing. So they created this like creative hub where they would just do animated shows, with Flash, obviously on a budget, but with a completely, total freedom of writing, animating, whatever they wanted. And so I started doing a couple of their shows, and of course, it was the very beginning, so they had some money, but there was no way to make money back. They didn't have banners or like ads, or it was like 98, 99. So that company lasted maybe like a couple of years, but one of the producers that was there ended up working at Warner Brothers, and so took me and my partner at the time over to Warner Brothers, where they were starting to do some new shows, and Scooby Doo was one of those shows. So
it certainly sounds like you had a really interesting journey on your way into, the industry, and the projects you worked on we're certainly looking forward to exploring as well. But do you remember if there was a particular show or movie that you remember really enjoying the music of, that you think perhaps inspired you to make that transition across from just music to music in animation, or just, music used in general in shows?
It was mainly pretty much anything from Ennio Morricone, I have to say. It was just I was just mesmerized. It was just like the spaghetti western stuff. was unbelievable. I remember watching it with my dad as a kid, and just like watching this like 3 hours movie with like these like, 30-second shots of just like the desert and having these like amazing sounds and not having any idea of what, those sounds were, but just like being like very, very captivated by it. Wasn't so much the animation per se. It was more the animation music. It was more like the live action, the Morricone stuff that was like outstanding to me. What is that movie? The 1492. Oh my God, the one with Robert De Niro, the Gabriel's Oboe. What is that cue from the Conquest of? Because we have different titles in Italian than in English, so that sometimes I can't. Anyway, it was pretty much. So my mom was a piano teacher, and she would play all these pieces, and I had no idea what she was doing, and we would have a lot of students coming to our house for lessons, but I just remember, being moved by the music, like at a very young age, without really knowing anything about music, but just like, I always found it a very direct and way of communicating, more than paint or sculpture. I mean, music always like talk to me like right away. And the fact that I liked really, really, really liked a lot of different kinds of music, like, still to these days, I listen to like Nine Inch Nails and Debussy at the same, within the same time. I don't know. It's just no difference to me. Whatever speaks to me, and I think it's good, I just listen to. So, I guess working in animation, it's a sum of all these styles like thrown in together. That's why I like it so much. I'm working on like 6 different shows right now, and they're all like very different. And I like to do preschool as I like to do, a horror, like chase sequence, because they're so different, so, you're not stuck, doing the same thing all the time, so.
Yeah. Well, you definitely have a talent, and we know that throughout your career, you've been a music editor, you've been a supervisor, you've been a composer. Did you always want to like try being all of them, or was it just a case of one thing led to another?
No, I have to say mainly a composer. I have to say, I don't know, maybe sometimes IMDb writes like odd stuff, but I've been really like a composer all my life. I haven't done really any editing, or music. So my old partner was a music supervisor, so maybe that's why we share some credits in it. Like, but I've been pretty much writing for the last 25 years, pretty much nonstop. And, still like, I have to say like 85% of my resume is still like animation, So,
yeah, I mean, that does make a lot of sense, especially when you consider the work that you went on to do as a composer on What's New Scooby Doo, and like all the Scoobies really, which, we absolutely love. And I'm curious to know, because obviously, like you said, with you moving and everything, when you came to work on Scooby Doo, how familiar were you with those characters beforehand?
Well, I mean, like being a kid that grew up watching these cartoons, I knew the series really well. But the funny thing about Scooby, which I thought it was very interesting, is that we were approached to do the DVDs first, and we had no idea there was gonna be a revamp of the show, because pretty much from like 1969 until like 2000, all we were watching was the same, I don't know, 20 episodes all over, all the time. It's always the same. And then, but the director of these DVDs, Scott Geralds, is a great guy, and he was a super fan the old, of course, of the Scooby, of the traditional Scooby. So he approached us and he said, you know, oh, you know, we're doing these DVDs, but I really like the old Scooby Doo music. So he's like, let's do this. I'm gonna get you all the cues from the 69, 70s, you know, recording sessions. And if you guys can replicate exactly, and when I mean exactly, is like, I don't wanna know which music I'm listening to. If you can replicate exactly with the computer, the sound and the cues from those 69s, you know, 1969 sessions, I'll give you a shot at doing the music for the DVDs. So it was very, very tough because, you know, music technology was kind of, you know, it was growing, but it was kind of, and booming, but it was kind of like still, you know, it was like mid-90s to, I guess, like 96, 97. You started to do artist recording and you started using samplers, and you know, of course, only the major composers had like access to like really, really good sounds. And for me, you know, I had a very limited budget, and so it was very challenging to do these cues. And but then I picked three cues. I did it for him to the point that I didn't know which one was which, you know. And so he said, oh, great. So, and then he said, what can we do to make it a little more modern? So I threw in some hip hop loops on top and some sequencer things, and that created this sound that everybody loved over there. And it wasn't super, I mean, it kind of came as natural to me to add these sounds to an old sound. And so he loved it, and that's the sound that you hear in kind of Legend of the Vampire, where you hear these like traditional Scooby cues with some loops and some like more modern sound. It was a mixture of these things. And then so they really like what we did for the DVDs. And then the What's New Scooby Doo show came about, and the challenge was we had a really tough schedule. I have to say, it was really, really tough because and we were still working out of VHS tape. It was technology-wise was very challenging. And the most challenging things for the Scooby show was that every episode was pretty much based in a different area. There is the Greek episode, there is the New Orleans episode, there is the Safari episode, there is the Costa Rica episode, the Italian episode. So they wanted specific sounds, you know, from that country for each one of these episodes. And, you know, this is like 99, 2000. So computers were not that great. Sound libraries were not that great. And so it was very, 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 very challenging to do this sort of sound in a box, in a bedroom, you know, by myself. And, you know, we would get the tape on a Monday morning, and Thursday had to be mixed and synced, and everything, you know, had to be ready, because on Saturday they would show this on a Saturday morning, you know, Warner Brothers channel. So, and it was 22 minutes of music, and we were writing the songs too, because in almost every episode there was an original, not in all of them, but there was an original song. So it was very, very intense.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like in terms of timeframes and things like that, there was a lot of pressure, but it was really interesting to hear about how your work on Scooby did come about. And having worked as both the composer for Legend of the Vampire and Monster of Mexico, having to, like you say, start off by taking a look at some of that original music and the original sounds. Was there any pressure that this had already been so, like you say, pre-established, and that part of the task that you were given was for such well-known sounds as well?
No, I mean, it was really fun, to be honest. It was very difficult, but it was really fun, because at the end of the day, you take these like minute and a half cues, and that are like so, you know, known and popular, but you throw in this different sound, and something completely new came about. And I remember the writer of the What's New Scooby Doo show, one of the writers just like went crazy about it. He was like, you guys gotta do the show because that is this, everybody loved the sound. But the funny thing is that the producers and the showrunner on the TV show didn't really like that approach. And the director of the DVDs wasn't the director of the TV show. So the TV show took a almost like 360-degree turn, compared to the DVDs. And they wanted what I said before, specific sounds from each, specific country, but also they wanted like a big orchestral and very scary ensemble. They didn't want the traditional, cues from the 60s, because they sounded too like small and not scary enough. They wanted to scare the kids a lot, especially at the end of each act, when you see the monster opening up the mouth, in a big, before going to breaks. Always their note was like, we gotta be huge and big and scary every time we go to like a commercial break. So we were able to keep some of those cues, but very, very little for the What's New Scooby-Doo TV show. It was pretty much, all new. I remember there is the snowboard episode. It was obviously rock. There is a couple of skateboard where they're like on skateboards, and of course that turned out like a punkish, rock score. The most challenging episode out of all of the What's New Scooby-Doo show was by far I think it was number 4, the New Orleans episode, where they wanted the bluegrass band, but like wanted like a horror bluegrass Dixieland band. And that was very, very difficult to do because of the technology and the libraries that were, available at those times. That was very, very difficult. But, we pulled it off, so.
Oh, you definitely did. The music for What's New was brilliant, but I also did like the music for Legend of the Vampire and Monster of Mexico. And we were just wondering, from those 2 films, did you have a favorite composition that you created for one of them?
Yeah, there were a couple of those cues, especially from Vampire, Legend of the Vampire, that I love them so much because they reminded me of when I was a kid. And I would hear those cues like, because I think there is a total of like, if I'm not mistaken, maybe like 30 cues that were used for all these shows in the city. And they're always the same cues, like always the same. And so now, it's been a while, so I don't remember exactly. I still have the demos, somewhere here on the hard drives, but it was one of those major classic Scooby themes with some like hip hop loop underneath, which made it sound like very, very unique,
Oh wow, yeah, it's great to hear you talk so fondly about doing those original tracks and how they are integrated into the movie. It's just amazing. And so I'm curious to know, when the work was done and the movie was all put together, how did you first see the movie? Both Legend of the Vampire and Monster of Mexico, was there like an in-house premiere with like the cast and crew, or did you watch the DVD, I guess, after the fact?
No, it wasn't anything like that. It was just like I just watched on DVDs. Yeah, it wasn't anything fancy. Even for the TV show, I just remember watching it on a Saturday, Saturday morning. I think there were a couple of specials. I think there was a Christmas special that was very nice. That was shown maybe like 6 p.m. And so I remember gathering some friends, and that was very nice to watch on a Saturday. Yeah, I don't think it was Saturday morning. It was like more like, 5 p.m. And I definitely remember the Christmas special. Then there was a Halloween one, but don't remember so much about these other 2. but the Christmas I remember really well because that one it was another difficult one, and the one that I really like the music for that one as well. Very horror, Christmassy, scary. Like that one a lot. So
Yeah, that's definitely one of the ones that we go back to annually. There's just, I mean, what's new Scooby Doo? That whole era had so many classics. I think that's also the only Scooby series, I believe, anyway, to have a Valentine's Day special as well. Like it went through all
oh
the
yeah.
holidays there, and it's just absolutely amazing to go back to them all. And in terms of, moving forward with everything, we recently, I don't know when this came out, but we recently had a movie called Trick or Treat Scooby Doo. That original soundtrack was released a couple of months ago. And so, because I love the music for, Legend of the Vampire and What's New Scooby Doo so much, behind the scenes at Warner Brothers, was there ever discussed to be like a CD release for any of these original sounds or a digital release after the fact at all? Or is that just something that was never really spoken about?
I remember, no, I remember the conversation. I remember we were trying to talk about Warner Brothers, talking about why don't we put together like a list of like, because also I remember Chuck Sheets was the producer on the What's New Scooby Doo. He was a huge fan of the Ramones. That's why you hear a lot of like Ramones track in it, and punk in general. But we approached Warner Brothers a bunch of times saying, why don't we put together some, original songs and some Ramon song for like a soundtrack or we recorded some original song with like some demi, I think Simple Plan was the main title, but some other artists too. And I don't know, Warner Brothers they never said yes, or they were like, oh, let us think about it, and nothing came about ever. So obviously, yeah, they own all the music, so they can do whatever they want.
It's such a shame because I know so many of us say that, What's New, certainly in terms of Scooby music, was the best era that we had
We
for
got
that.
the theme song, but I think that's the only officially released thing we've got in terms of official soundtrack releases.
Oh, that's you're probably right. I mean, some of these songs, were written in like 40 minutes. I mean, we didn't have time, like at all, to do the full score and the songs. It was crazy, so it just went by like so fast. But you're probably right. I don't know. I think like Simple Plan performed live a couple of times during their live shows. I don't know. I've heard about that.
Yeah, we heard a really nice story about somebody that had worked on What's New Scooby Doo, and they'd got to hear it. Where was it, JayBee? The
Troubadour, yeah. Troubadour.
Yeah, a Simple Plan concert. So I think it's something that even to this day, quite a lot of us, if we heard that song played anywhere, we'd be so excited. It's just such a well-known song to, I'd say, everybody, really. I can't think of many people who would hear What's New Scooby Doo and just not have any associations with it whatsoever. It certainly was a really impressive time for Scooby music. And so to hear that you did some of that in 40 minutes when I think a lot of us would still be at a loss after 40 hours is really impressive, and just great to hear what working on the show was like for you. Did you ever kind of work alongside quite closely, or were you on kind of separate episodes with the other composer, Rich Dickerson?
No, we were pretty much working at the same time. I mean, it was mainly he was doing more of the songs, like the lyrics and the production, and I was doing more of the score and all the the engineering and like the orchestrations, for it. So it was really like a joint effort for the two of us. So.
Yeah, and I suppose in terms of the theme song, it's a lot of fans' favorite, and it's certainly my favorite. Did you have a feeling when you were writing it that it would be so popular?
Well, it was the amount of work, and I also stress was so much that we really didn't think about it. Like there was really no time to, like, even to this day, I'm still, you know, doing animation and but really, I mean, working on Scooby Doo really changed my life, you know, and I don't think I would still be living in LA, you know, if it wasn't for Scooby Doo, to be honest. So I was kind of young, and I wouldn't say naive, but it was one of these things that they threw you off a cliff, and if you sort of can fly, and you manage not to die, but while you're doing it, you're not realizing like how much is at stake. Like those 4 years really changed my life and my career, and but while you're in it, you're just thinking about the next cue. Like you're just thinking about doing a good job and surviving that week, and then another episode comes, and you're like starting from scratch and try to deliver, you know, all done in 3-4 days. And so, you know, it was very stressful. You know, I would never come. I still remember to these days. And the funny thing is that I was like, okay, I'm in this business now. It works like that. You know, it's gonna be like that all the time, and it's actually not. You know, now I get 2 weeks to do an episode. You know, yeah, of course, you know, they overlap, and you know, I have like to do a lot of, you know, episodes in a week. But first of all, I'm much faster now. The technology is there to support me, and you know, the schedules are a little more reasonable. I don't know somehow why there was such a crunch time back then, you know, thinking that you would start working on an episode on a Monday and Saturday would be on the air, like national, in all the nation. You know, if you think about it while you're working, you're like, you're gonna have an art, you know what I mean? You're gonna die. You're like, so you just like don't think about it. And like with the theme song, we just did it, and you know, they were looking at the, you know, the Red Hot Chili Peppers. They were looking at other, you know, artists as well, and that song just kind of stuck with them, and at the end, that's what they picked. So they're talking to Gwen Stefani and you know, all sort of big names. So it's one of these things that, you know, it's probably better, the fact that you don't have time and the deadlines are so close, and because, you know, if you really think about it, you probably just, I don't know, like freeze or something, you know, you just like do it day after day, you know. And then, you know, season 2, it was a little easier, and season 3 was a little easier too. Season 1 was definitely like really tough, you know. But Chuck Sheets was a great producer to work with. You know, we had March Dean was a great producer to work with. Christopher Keenan was a great producer to work with. So it was a really good, and a lot of them I still see today, you know. So when we go around, you know, to the animation markets all over the world, I still see them, and you know, it's fun to talk about these old days, you know. So
Yeah, well, it sounds stressful, but it sounds very rewarding, and it was nice to hear you say how much Scooby changed your career. So I was just wondering, do you have a particular favorite memory from your time working on What's New?
favorite memory, let me think. I mean, it was fun because I was living in a really small apartment in West Hollywood, you know, with 2 cats and my wife, and it was just funny to see. Sometimes we would have like 6-7 producers coming to the apartment to preview the music. It was just like really, because I didn't have a proper studio set up, you know. I didn't have like a fancy like a receptionist offering cookies and beverages. It was just like, okay, here's my kitchen. Let's walk to the kitchen and go in the, you know, it was kind of nice looking, but it was an extra bedroom, and you know, I had a real piano in it, a couch, a computer setup, TV screens, and so with 6 people in it, it was really crazy. Like we were just like jamming it. I was holding my little VCR remote, and like they had like all these like notepads, and I'm playing the show, I'm playing the episode, and I hear like the pens going like, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna get so many notes. So it's like gonna be, they're gonna like kill me tonight, But I don't know. As I said, I was kind of young, and one of these situations, like either do or die, So
Yeah,
I
that's
think that
incredible. Yeah, especially
that was the
because
most.
oh,
Sorry, JB, go
yeah,
ahead.
no
Go ahead.
worries. No, it's just amazing to hear you reflecting on these because I think just even last year was the 20th anniversary of What's New Scooby Doo. So it definitely was a while ago. So it's amazing to hear what great memory you've got still, even to this day of it.
Yeah, and and I keep doing the same things, still like animation with, and so it's kind of it's came full circle. I did some movies too, like in these years, but mainly, because now, I know so many producers, all over the world, and it's become a very global market. It's a joint collaboration sometimes with like different nations. It's not just like, there is not Cartoon Network and Disney Channel and Nickelodeon anymore. There is all these different, streaming services. And so it's amazing to me that there's still like so much, so much love for animation, so much demand for content. And there's so much, so much work out there still, like, which is great.
And are there any of those projects that you're either working on now or that are coming up that you can speak about at all? And is there an ideal place for people watching to keep up with that work?
Well, I've been doing a lot of shows on Netflix right now because, it just seemed like it's a natural outlet for, I did all the Norm of the North movies for Lionsgate. Right now I'm working a lot with this company called MGA Entertainment, and they do all the LOL, Bratz, Rainbow High, Mermaids. They have some new shows called Baby Born. So I'm pretty much doing all of their animated shows, which is a lot. And also another business that came up during these years after working so much into the animation is the voiceover work. So I'm doing a lot of voiceover, not personally, but my company Sonic Vault now as a whole division just for voiceover. And so for all these shows that I just mentioned, we are doing recording the actors. So it's a lot of fun just to watch them coming over to the studio and see them, record. So it's just like, I watch cartoons every day, 6 days a week, pretty much. Still to this day, days. So that pretty much it.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, I will leave the link to that in the description down below. And that does conclude all of the questions that we had for you today. Just thank you so much for the time you've given us today and for all the stories that you've shared, because it's been an absolute honor to speak with you today.
Thank you so much, guys. Of course, my pleasure.
That is incredible. And thank you so much to everyone for watching. You can find all of ours and Dan's social links in the description down below as well. And if you do want to see more, then please like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.